Hello and welcome to the podcast. We are the Cosmic Commentators, and we're here to take a look at all aspects of spirituality, religion, and metaphysics.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm here with the wonderful Alex. So would be delighted if you would join us as we delve deep to the subject of life beyond the veil.
Yo, Rachel.
Hi, Alex.
How are we?
We're good, thanks. A little bit tongue twisted earlier, but we're slowly getting there. But you know what? I'm laughing to myself because we're actually going to talk about words and language and the fact that we couldn't get anything out five
How
minutes
topical.
ago. It's just maybe the universe is telling us something. Yeah, that'll teach you about language and telling everyone what's happening in the English vocabulary.
So what's today's topic, Rachel?
Surprise, surprise, words.
Spellings.
Spellings and words. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose it's an unusual one because I think we have always known language, learned a language, never questioned language and words and spellings, have we?
True. Very true.
And I think on the back of kind of what we spoke about in the last podcast about telepathy and their ability to communicate without words and spellings, I think it just fits so well into kind of what we're going to explore today.
A good segue.
It is, yeah. Again, I don't think it was intentional, but I think it's just worked in that way. It's just flowed, universally flowed together.
It's flowing together.
And I was listening to, me and names. I was listening to a wonderful woman. There we go. That's
Somebody.
Another wonderful woman. And she was talking about how our voice is a boomerang. And I questioned that. I'm like, what boomerang? Okay. And then she went in to talk about how obviously the words that we put out there, as we say them, we send them out into the universe and how they come back tenfold. And the importance of being consciously aware of actually what we're saying.
Yeah.
And I think the vast majority of us just say things. And when we go, what's that about? What's the meaning behind that?
Yeah.
I think it's quite frightening, isn't it? And we've done quite a deep dive into this, haven't we?
We've certainly taken a look, and there does seem to be some correlation, doesn't there, between
100%.
what we say and the subliminal messaging behind what we're saying that we didn't have a choice in, and we've just, sort of taught it from a very early age.
Absolutely. And for me, it's about how hard it is to break that habit. And I think one of the key things, and it's something I think I've consciously changed now, but good morning.
You always address me with grand rising.
Yes. And it was only when somebody said to me, why are you using the word morning? I'm like, well, it's the morning. And they were like, right, but how else? Think about how, spelled differently, but what else that word, what else is that used for? And I'm like, morning, sadness, death, loss, bereavement. So I'm wishing them sadness every morning. Good sadness to you.
Yeah.
And it was only after that I was like, oh, wow. And I do, consciously I will always talk about grand rising. That is it. And it just honestly feel it puts me in such a different space. It really does. And again, when you start, a bit like everything, when you start looking at that, then you go, oh, well, if that word has those double meanings and we just randomly say it, as most people do, you're out walking the dogs, what do people go? Morning.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So now, rather than I don't go grand rising to everyone because they'll be going, well, who is your one? What a grand rising. What a strange way to greet somebody.
Good day. Good day.
Yeah, good day or hi.
Hello. Hi
But
there.
not hello.
Yeah, hello. We've got hell in it, hasn't it?
Yes.
So obviously this episode is about the hidden meaning, the hidden spell, the hidden spells in the English language that we all say every day.
Absolutely.
That we're completely unaware of.
And there is a massive list. Alex is far more prepared than I am. So he has he's jotted down some ones and we're going to kind of talk through some of those, aren't we?
We have. I've got a few
But
things.
it is quite worrying that
It's there, isn't it? It's
how it's infiltrated our life.
and you don't even think about it. You just say you just say good morning, don't you? And you think you're being polite, and which you are. The intention is there, isn't it? But are you casting some kind of spell on you that's been put on us by, the death cult?
Absolutely.
Whoever, runs the show.
And it goes back to when we talked about, I think the manifestation one we talked about, and how what we say, it's an intention, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And while there might be good intent, because of the language we're using, the impact that could potentially have.
Well, I mean, apparently abracadabra means as I speak, I create. So are the hidden spells in language? There very could well be. I mean, like in the morning you awake.
Yep.
For a good morning.
Yes. Wake.
Wake.
Okay, so obviously that has been a tradition of, a celebration following the passing of a loved one. So it's all very dark, isn't it? So you awaken, or you become awake. To a morning. It kind of sounds...
And to quote the Bible, Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Ooh. Proverbs 18:21. It's biblical.
So it's in plain sight, people.
Plain sight. So should we go through some of the words that we say that could be sort of tricking the subconscious mind into sort of negative spell casting on ourselves?
Absolutely. And also maybe some of the words that perhaps weren't in the original English language, like Old English, we wouldn't have a lot of these words, but how these have kind of crept into our vocabulary and how we now use them like they've always been there, and we know no different.
And there's new ones that have been added, which we'll get into later. So, well, obviously spelling that says it all, doesn't it?
Pretty much, isn't it?
Spelling. So you're casting a spell.
And from we're talking about children now. We've already they're already encapsulated in this new realm of these words and understanding. Well, we don't understand the words, do we?
No,
we just learn the words.
We just absorb them.
We do, and we just reiterate them.
Yeah, willy-nilly, just
without really thinking about why am I saying that's an unusual word, or even when, as you said, when the words because it's all about the sound, isn't it? Because the sound is the vibration.
Yeah.
So irrespective of how many meanings there are, through the throat chakra, we're putting out that into the world.
Yeah.
And it's the vibration, it's the sound that comes with that.
Yeah. It is, and
and when we
did
talk
I say about abracadabra?
You did, yeah. And the other one for me is, and again, it's very hard to get around because we all say it, weakened. At the weekend, we're weakened.
By the weekdays, you're in a weekdays.
Yeah, which again, and there's a lot of stuff I think around kind of our work and being programmed to work. And I think on maybe, I don't think we'll cover it all today, but maybe on another podcast, I think it'd be helpful to look at how language has seeped into our law as well. Mm-hmm. And how the maritime law was developed and how there's so many hidden meanings within that.
Like understand.
Absolutely. Understand. And birth. Because it's a maritime, it's a ship, has a birth. We are birthed through a canal.
Meanings. There's
so many double meanings, but there's so much within that itself and how that has creeped into both law and the banking system. I think it would be really useful almost to just do a one-off on that, because I think when I started to look into it, and I was listening to Jordan Maxwell around that, I'm like, oh my God, this is quite scary.
It's all Luciferian, isn't it? It's
absolutely
all Luciferianism.
And I of course I knew the word, but when he starts putting it together, I'm like, oh wow, this is all consciously created.
And it all comes down to witchcraft, because the sort of definition of witchcraft is trying to control or manipulate something. So God is free will, isn't it? God is free will, and witchcraft is to control and manipulate something. So interestingly, pharmakia is in the Bible, which means witchcraft and sorcery, So, through pharmakia, you are trying to control things, aren't you?
Absolutely.
In your body, whether it be a headache or whatever. So it's all witchcraft.
It is.
It's all witchcraft.
But look how it feeds into that control, feeds into all
every aspect of life.
Institutions as well. So medical, law, banking,
finance,
everything. It's all there, and how they utilize the words
to control and manipulate.
Yeah. And again, when we look more specifically around those terminology, I think it'll lead us perhaps into the straw man and that concept as well. But I think that's a lot to cover in just in just one.
too much for the brain.
And something you mentioned to me today, and I hadn't known, the word Job.
Job, in the Bible, which means persecute. So Job in the Bible was persecuted by God, and Job means in Hebrew. Hebrew is persecution.
I know. So again, around enslavement, around control,
toil.
Absolutely.
Just on the grind, a job of being persecuted all day, It's symbolic, isn't it? It's all symbolic language, Luciferian,
And we keep using it because
we don't know anything else. And like you say, it's difficult, isn't it, to communicate with other people and say, without using those words, because they would be like, you what? Well, you're going to what? I'm going to my place of work today. Not my job, not my persecution.
But I think when we're conscious, we can alter it. There are alternatives. It's just, it feels like popular culture is to just pop these words in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's the other side to that. Whereas, if you say, "I love you," and there's no love.
Yes.
In the feeling, you're still saying you love somebody.
Yeah.
But there's no love in your energy, so does intent have a sort of, can that counteract it maybe?
Do you know what? It feels like you've just set up what I'm going to say next, but it's worked perfectly. I know we're so connected, Alex. So, have you heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto?
Yes, the guy that did the rice experiment.
No, well, he did the rice, but he did water as well.
Oh, with the crystals and when you freeze them and
absolutely
the intention.
I mean, I do apologise if his first name has not been pronounced correctly. So, Dr. Emoto, if you ever watch this and I have mispronounced your name, I do apologise. So, what he did is he studied water. I think the book is called The Message from Water. But anyway, that might be slightly off. And what he started to look at water from various regions. So he looked at quite a polluted river in Japan, and then he looked at water from a spring. And again, he's a scientist. He again controlled, and what he found is how, depending on where the water came from, depended on the molecular structure and the geometric shapes that it created. Mm-hmm. And actually, there's a really wonderful 5-minute video that we can link to this that will kind of, it's short, it's sweet, it kind of clarifies everything we've been saying. So what he found is, depending on where the water came from, would highlight these incredible different geometric structures of the water. So obviously he compared the spring water, which had this incredible, it almost looked like a snowflake.
Because it was very natural.
It was natural. So what he did, he takes the water, he freezes it, and then obviously observes it under some sort of a specific magnifying glass, or microscope, actually. And then what he did, so he thought, oh, that's interesting. Let's kind of develop this a little bit more. So then what he did is he put some spring water and put 2 speakers each side of it and played different types of music. So he played classical music, so your Bach and your Beethoven, and then he played some healing music to it, and then he played heavy metal. And again, you see how the different formations
are being infused by the water.
Absolutely.
The water.
It's absolutely incredible. And again, the classical was just these incredible geometric shape. They looked absolutely stunning. And again, and the healing music, again, really beautiful. But then the heavy metal, it was all distorted, and there was no true formation within
the harmony.
Nothing. It was like splodges, and again, even the color of it was like, it was a darker, like a sludgy brown color.
Yeah.
So obviously he spent years kind of observing that and experimenting with music. But then, which again feeds, there is a link, people, I promise. So then the next area he went to is, I wonder whether language and intent could impact the molecular structure of water. So what he did is he wrote a saying, stuck it to the outside of the glass, and 24 hours later, he came back and observed the glass.
Yeah.
So one of the statements he put on the glass was, I love you. Okay. Again, came back, observed it. It was, again, a really beautiful formation. Another one was like, you are worthy. Again, the formation was just stunning. It is just, as I said, this incredible shape that was formed. He put another statement on the glass, obviously wrote on it. He said, I hate you and I want to kill you.
Yeah.
And again, put it on the outside of the glass. That was absorbed into the water. And the next time, obviously, he came back and examined it under the microscope. And again, it was similar to the heavy metal.
Deformed,
distorted. It was distorted. There was no clear formation. It was, again, very sporadic, just blobs all over it. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then I go to, as an adult, as a human being, as a grown adult, 70% of our body is water.
Yeah.
So if we speak bad words, or words that aren't healing and positive for us, or we have bad intent,
yeah,
what are we doing to our bodies?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, wow, the importance of speaking kindly about yourself and others.
Yeah.
Because actually, we are altering our own molecular structure, because 70% of us is water.
Definitely. And did you watch the rice experiment?
I don't. Do you know what? I think I did years ago, but honestly, I wouldn't be able to.
Well, this was quite interesting because it was a similar thing where you got one, this is cooked rice, you probably all have seen this, but you've got 3 jars of cooked rice. So you've got one that I say, I love you. Another one that you've got a label on that says, I hate you. And you do this for 30 days and go and send that intention to the rice for 30 days. And then another one that you completely ignore. Now, the findings seem to be the rice that you send I love you to doesn't decompose.
Oh, really?
Not as quickly.
Oh, amazing.
So the rice that you say I hate you to does decompose.
Yeah.
But the rice that you give nothing to decomposes really fast. So no attention
is worse than bad attention.
Is worse than bad attention. Now, isn't that interesting?
That is. Because I suppose, and I think now that you've said it, I recall that experiment now.
Yeah. The one that was left alone. Nothing,
absolutely.
Just
rotted. Because you would think that the one where it had direct hatred.
But it didn't decompose as much as the one that was just completely ignored.
Wow.
Doesn't that say something?
Absolutely.
So intention.
It is.
Even bad intention is better than no.
Absolutely.
Attention.
Yeah.
So that kind of links. And so if that's the case, when we're saying good morning,
yes,
and your energy is saying, I hope you have a great day.
Yes.
I want the best for you. Does that counterbalance any sort of negativity that's been put on us in the language?
I would like to think so.
Because if you don't know that means that's got that sort of subliminal messaging to it, would it have any power on you? Or, here's another point. So I was listening to an exorcist, and it says if you're not in a good place, in a state of grace or whatever, these things can have more power on you because there's a legality with it. So if you're in a bad place or you're doing bad things, these spells that are cast on you will have more effect on you.
And that makes sense. That does make... But again, I'm going back to...
Which is positivity, isn't it? Goodness and
absolutely.
All that.
And I think if you, with good intent, go, good morning, how are you?
Yeah.
But how many people do that? Or is it just a morning?
It's just formality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Morning, I've got to say it because I've got to. So
there is no...
It's like the rice that got no attention almost, isn't
Yeah.
it? So it's neither good nor bad. It was just something I'm saying.
And this is, again, I keep harping on about being consciously aware of why we're doing. Because do you know what? You might as well not say anything.
Yeah.
You know, if there's no... It's routine, isn't it? We just feel like we should just say these things and do this. But if there's no positive intent behind it, I'm like, don't bother.
Yeah, without intentionality. Yeah, definitely. And it's that thing where, when you point a finger at somebody and there's one finger going that way and then three that come back at you.
Yeah.
Is that good and bad, sort of, I send you good energy, I'll get the energy back. I'll send you bad energy, I'll get the energy back.
I think so. I really do. And I think I was reading this paper around our neurological wiring of the brain and how when we say things, we may not necessarily be saying them about ourselves, but actually our brain can't distinguish that. It just assuming. So if I'm bitching about somebody, my brain doesn't go, oh, well, she's bitching about somebody else, so therefore that won't be absorbed.
Yeah.
It's words, I'm saying them, it's coming from me.
Yeah. You're the generator of them.
Absolutely. So while the intent may not be directly at me, I am.
Well, you're embodying it, aren't you?
Absolutely.
You're creating it.
And I'm absorbing it.
And abracadabra.
Yes.
I speak. When I create. When I create, I speak.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
So irrespective of whether I'm being bitchy or not, it's still coming back to bite me in the arse.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
My brain can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So I may as well just call myself those things that I'm placing on other people.
So I guess that would have the opposite effect if you're speaking highly of somebody or praising somebody or, speaking life into them,
Sure.
That'll speak life
into you.
Into you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to when we spoke about the spiritual laws, isn't it? It's about what you put out, you get back.
You do put out, yeah. I agree with that.
And again, everything we've kind of talked about previously, again, just it's all interconnected, isn't it?
It does seem to be. It does seem to be. But this English language does seem to be almost like an attack on you, you know what I mean, to try and sort of fool you into sort of that sort of negative, destructive sort of.
Yeah.
If every you start the day with a wake and a morning.
Yes.
That's a death cult that's put that sort of
absolutely
language in place because
wonderful. Absolutely.
Again, in Spain, in Spanish, you say buenos dias, which is good day.
Yeah.
So that's way more positive than good morning. You know what I mean?
Morning. Yeah.
Morning or,
And again, when people, obviously, you kind of say, they have they sneeze and you go, bless.
Bless you.
Bless you. Be less.
Be less. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much of this. And some of the words I have to say that I heard, I wasn't necessarily...
The bit clutching at straws.
Yeah, I did feel a little bit like that. But then there's other stuff, and particularly around government. And I think we talked about that before. You govern the mind. Television, telling lies to my vision. Yeah. So again, and a lot of these terms... back in when the Old English was created, there wasn't televisions.
No.
So those words wouldn't have existed. So it didn't impact us. Whereas now, these words were specifically created.
Yeah.
And I think so for me, and again, I've nothing to prove this, but for me, the latter words that were created are the ones that have these double meanings.
Yes. Well, think of a television broadcast.
Yes.
Now, the TV manipulates because it tells you how to think. So a broadcasting of that particular spell through a channel.
Absolutely. Again, see how the words
see how they all come together.
Absolutely.
They all come together. And then obviously there's Hollywood.
Yes.
So the holly tree is the ancient Phoenicians and magicians. That's what the ancient Phoenicians and magicians used as their wands to cast spells. And I mean, look at Hollywood. Again, you completely propagandize with their movies. Yeah. And at the end of a film, it gives you the list of the cast.
Spell.
It's all, everything's witchcraft. Which
It
is
is.
to control and manipulate.
And we do know, and we've talked about this morning, everything is in plain sight.
It really is.
Because there is that universal law that you have to put out there what you intend to do. And I think, how many times have we seen movies and then years later you're like, oh.
The plot happens.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, we've seen it time and time again.
Yeah.
It's just, we talked about consent, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And how if they put it in plain sight, because we're not objecting to it, it's almost implied consent, so that doesn't impact their karmic debt. Or they perceive it doesn't impact their karmic debt.
If you're going to a movie about 2 planes hitting a building, you are consenting to that, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Same as if you take a injectable, a state injectable, you are consenting to that.
Absolutely.
And there's a legality with these type things. And when you sort of get into this esoteric sort of dark occultist world, there is a legality with it, with demons, dark spirits. You agree to it by
presence,
partaking of it and
absolutely,
and absorbing it, you know.
Absolutely. And it's going back a couple of years ago. I got a letter from the school that said, obviously, if your child is in on a certain day, that is implied consent that we can administer stuff to them.
What? Crazy, isn't it?
That's so presence, being present means consent.
Yeah, yeah.
And not, I'm not slagging people because I think we're bombarded by so much. I don't think people necessarily go, oh, hold on. No, but that's, I don't agree to that.
Well, it's not informed consent, is it? It's not fully
and it's
informed.
Not explicit.
No.
Is it? If they happen to be in school on that particular day, this might happen then.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, what?
But, these dark forces are really pushing, aren't they now? They're really...
Absolutely.
They're desperate almost. Yeah. They're desperate.
And I think whereas before it was more subtle.
Way subtle.
Whereas now it's definitely in your face.
Yeah.
And when you have those, and I'm like, me and letters and deciphering and I'm like...
Yeah.
And I had to send a letter back going, you do not have my implied consent.
Yeah.
And should you do that, you will have a legal case on your hand.
Yeah, and that's the top and the bottom to it.
Absolutely. But had I not been informed around the subtlety of language, I'd probably just have gone.
Again, yeah, sure. I mean, luckily you knew what was going on in the world.
Yeah. Well, I know elements of it, not all of it. I don't.
I don't think all of us know all of it, do we?
But I think, I knew where things were going.
Enough to safeguard your child.
Yeah, which is quite scary.
It's really scary because, we've been attacked, aren't we? We've been attacked through words, through the air, through the food, through TV, through media. Your Wi-Fi could be potentially doing stuff to you that we don't know about.
Absolutely. And I think particularly, it's everywhere. And it's something for me that's relatively new. And when I'm talking about relatively new, I'm talking about in the last maybe 15 years. Informed consent. Mm-hmm. How many times a day do you say informed consent?
Yeah.
But the thing is, we can't give informed consent because we're not always given the information. We're given elements of the information. And then people go, oh yeah, informed consent. They had all the information.
They didn't have all the information.
No, they did not. No.
They didn't.
So we're still it's still implied consent. But we package it up as, oh yes, they've been informed,
So there's got to be, because of all these people that have been duped and tricked throughout life. I mean, that includes me, and I'm sure 100%.
You as well. We're not saying that we've managed to skirt around this and go. Absolutely not.
There's got to be a balance due at the end of that, hasn't there? For the people that have done this to us, those scales of justice will have to, balance out at some point because again, we're giving free will here. I do believe, that God gives free will, and the Star Trek directive says the same thing.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? We are given free will.
Yeah.
And so when you manipulate and trick people into things that they don't really know what they're doing, there's got to be some justice at the end of that.
I'm with you. And while they might say they do consent, it's implied consent because they are present. I don't think that's sufficient.
It's not full consent.
No, I agree with you.
When you do this is the potential that could happen. You don't, look what happened in the last 4 years. People weren't given informed consent. They were just manipulated via the broadcast and the media.
Yeah.
What I'd consider the devil, to do these things. And look at the data now, what's happening. I know we can't really talk about that because we might get another strike against the channel.
It's already happened, people.
Already happened, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yes, and we promise we will get this information out to you, but it may be in slightly sectionable ways.
Where you have to connect the dots. We'll give you all the dots, but you will have to connect them.
We'll drop the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. For those that know, they probably know it anyway, don't they?
Hopefully, but I think we did a lot of linking together, didn't we? And then we're like, oh, what about this? And how does that fit to that?
And we got instantly reprimanded, didn't we?
We did, and we've tried on other channels, and it's not happening, but we will. I promise you, we will get it out there at some stage because it is so important that you are aware of it and what's happening.
Yeah. To be confirmed. We'll do it.
To be continued.
To be continued, yeah.
Yes. We might have to break it up into sections that you get 2 minutes over a period of time so that we don't have that strike against us again. But that's, and you know what? And it was, I have to say, I really enjoyed, that particular episode. And when we started researching, it was kind of mind-blowing. And when we were over and back going, have you seen this? And what about this? And and it was just incredible. Mm-hmm. But for me, and I was sad. I wouldn't say sad. I was disappointed that we didn't get it out there.
Yeah.
But then I'm going, why not? We've obviously hit something that is touchy. So we're like, okay, we definitely have something here, and we will definitely get it out to you in some form.
Yeah. We've got to find the way to do it where we're not actually saying it. We're saying it without actually saying it.
Yeah.
Because of the mafia that control us.
Yes. Again.
Yes.
Control.
Control.
Again, another aspect of our lives.
Control, it's all comes down to what you'd identify as a cult and witchcraft. It really is.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just trying to think, is there any other words that we haven't?
I'm just having a look through my list now.
Because there's quite a few, yeah.
Sentence, giving someone a term when you write a sentence. And I saw one that I don't know if I quite agree with, but signature. So sig is like a sigil.
Yes.
Which is an energetic sort of symbol.
Yes.
And then nature, I don't know. So when you sign something, it's like a contract, isn't it? You're entering into a contract. So maybe that is one.
But yeah. Hold on to that, because I think that would be really interesting to explore when we look at the language within kind of maritime law and stuff. Because there's a lot of stuff linking to that.
Yeah.
So that would kind of fit with me.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's all. Haven't we done? We've done hello, haven't we? Hello.
We have.
Government, we've done that. Signature, Hollywood. Sentence. Understand. And alcohol, which means a body-eating spirit. Alcohol.
Yeah. And they do talk a lot about that. And obviously, when people utilize substances, it is that they're more likely to have that attack by those demonic entities because it's flesh eating, isn't it? And that they're spirit eating.
And I think they can use you because I guess maybe your auric field is down because your natural state. You've got I think everyone has got, as long as they're relatively healthy in mind, body, and spirit. You have a natural protection, don't you?
Absolutely.
And it's when you lower that by taking substances. I heard an interesting one about cannabis, that when you smoke cannabis, it's got a certain frequency.
It has,
so
yes.
If your frequency is higher, it will pull your frequency down to the frequency of cannabis once you partake in it. And alternatively, if you've got a lower frequency than the cannabis will pull you up to that frequency. So it's quite interesting, that is.
But that would make sense as to why people react differently then.
Everyone reacts differently because everyone's got a different sort of baseline.
Which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Very interesting. So, yes. Yeah, I think.
And then I go back. Sorry, I'm gone on a bit of a detour here.
Go for it. Go for it.
And it kind of fits with a little bit what we talked about in the previous episode around telepathy, and a little bit on the words. So, Buddhist monks, they spend years in solitude and never use words, do they? And they hit the highest level of enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So, is language keeping us rooted, grounded, down, oppressed?
Very, 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 very possibly, And, I think, is this why people, pray and chant? Because, I mean, like, I've started to do the rosary, and I must say, the calming effect that's got on me, from whether it's the repetition or whether it's because it's a powerful prayer or whatever, it's like having a bath almost.
Oh,
like
yeah,
a spiritual
I get
bath.
That. Yeah,
you feel, I can be quite angry and aggravated by just life and stuff.
Absolutely.
And then I can sit within sort of a few repetitions of the first decade of the rosary. I'm like, oh.
Well, that fits again back to our chakras. Each of our chakras has a sound, has a vibrational sound.
Yeah.
And when we chant that, obviously it opens up our chakra, but it's not words, is it? It's sound vibration.
Yeah.
So maybe that's so sound is healthy, isn't it? It's that, obviously not heavy metal apparently from Dr. Emoto, but that sound, that repetition, kind of raises our vibration.
Yeah, and for me, it's got to be said slowly, because some people say it really fast, and it's like no, it's got to be said slowly.
Yeah, it is a slow,
calmly, and that's when you get the most,
like a melody almost, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, some people sing the rosary.
Yeah.
They sing it, and when I go to Catholic Mass, and a lot of the Mass will be sung,
yes.
because there's frequency in it.
There's frequency. And I think that's where it is. So it's not about the sound that impacts us. It's down to the spellings, those words that.
Yeah. Well, I also heard, interestingly, on another podcast I watched when we were sort of researching this, that the repetition of these things either way affects your DNA.
Yes, that is true. Yeah. So certain frequencies can alter our DNA. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure it's the 369, isn't it? Hertz.
And the solfeggio.
Yes.
Frequencies, as it's
well, each of those apparently, and I've obviously looked into them, but right now couldn't tell you exactly which frequency, but they are all connected to healing certain elements of the body. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure it's the 369 is the one which helps to repair and restore our DNA structure.
And also, what's interesting is, like I used to look into Taoism years ago, and certain emotions will affect certain parts of the body. So anger attacks the liver.
Yes, it does.
And that's quite interesting how certain emotions, will attack certain parts of the body. You'll have a physical manifestation of illness through, through anger or the suppression of anger.
Yes, and that's the thing. Because anger is quite healthy, isn't it?
Well, it's an emotional release, isn't it?
Sure.
It's a cleansing,
yeah.
isn't it?
And I think, again, not allowing us to express anger means it's stored.
Well, I've got an interesting story, just going off topic. One of my friends who was told as a female that she was not allowed to express anger and was really sort of berated for being angry because she was a girl and it wasn't the thing to do. She had a real issue with the liver and she had to have a liver transplant. And because of that, and I remember knowing her, when I knew her, I've always, I'm not saying knowing her, but she could never access anger. She would always go to tears and then blame herself. And I'm like, why aren't you angry about this? Because this would make most people angry. So she was bypassing anger straight to tears, and hence she had a huge liver issue, ended up having a liver transplant. And I found that very interesting. And I said, you need to get angry about this because it's healthy, because, we're here 100%. To experience every emotion.
Yes. Absolutely.
And obviously, within certain limits, it's not nice to be angry, but, righteous anger, when you've got the right to be angry, you should express that, because...
Absolutely. But I think there's this confusion between anger and aggression. They're two completely different things. The aggression is the behavioural response to anger,
Yeah.
But anger is the emotion. It is the expression of that. And that for me is completely healthy. And I remember when, quite a lot of when I was working with the victim survivors of sexual assault, they wouldn't feel angry. They were almost frightened to connect to that anger. So a bit like your friend, they would go straight to kind of the sadness and depression. And I'm like, no, let's get back to the anger. You were violated. Your boundaries were breached.
Yeah.
Feel that anger. Connect to that.
And but there's purge it. It's a purging.
Absolutely. But and there's a lot of research around now about why victim survivors of sexual assault, one of the key things they can't get over is shame, because there's shame attached to the anger, and they don't want to feel the anger.
They've suppressed it.
And there's a shamefulness around that, and fully connecting with that experience.
Because when you're angry, you're almost standing in your power, aren't you? You go, I do not accept this.
Absolutely.
This was wrong, and you're claiming your power back almost.
Absolutely.
So to go to shame is it's that sort of
And when you listen to all the experts, and there's loads of experts out there around trauma, they will all say, managing shame within this population of victim survivors of trauma is a really challenging aspect of healing and recovery.
Of course, you've got to purge it, haven't you? You've got to get it.
You've got to
get
it
deal
out.
With it and get it out.
Got to get out. Yeah.
Because it'd be interesting to see, what demographic of people that didn't do that, how that would manifest in the physical or your mental body.
Yeah. I'm. Who was I? I'm reading at the moment. Bessel van der Kolk, and his book is called "The Body Keeps the Score."
Ah.
Super interesting. I've done a lot of work. He's again an expert in trauma, and particularly around sexual assault. And his book is basically how, when our unresolved trauma impacts our physical health.
Dis-ease.
Absolutely.
Dis-ease. There's another one for you. Dis-ease.
So it is. So if we don't, again, our thoughts, our emotions, if we're not expressing them, if we're not getting them out there, we're storing, and we become physically. We attack the physical vessel that we are.
Physical vessel. And interestingly, again, I know I keep going back to exorcisms and all this, but I'm looking into sort of religion as well, obviously, because we do talk about all these things. They say that when people get demon possessed, it's normally through a wound, an emotional wound, where these things can come in because of the suppression or the shame or whatever. So you make yourself vulnerable sort of energetically. Yeah. So these disembodied spirits that cannot bear to be disembodied will attach.
Of course.
Because they'd rather be in an animal than be disembodied.
Absolutely.
So they will, if you've got a big wound and a big red hole going, come on in, I feel terrible. Yeah. And it's that sort of, this is where these things come from.
But a physical wound, that's where infection comes in.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. It is the same thing. No different. It's just...
for me, I like to link both sides of the spirituality and the religion side.
Absolutely.
Because I think we're talking the same language with semantics.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So...
and the spiritual and the physical world as well. It's all linked.
Well, as above, so below,
as
on
within.
earth, as is in heaven.
Yeah.
it's all there,
As within, so without.
As within, so without. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. So there we go.
So wow, that was
we went off a little bit there once again, didn't we? We went off a little bit on a tangent, but what else would we do?
I know, but again, there is a link. There is a
link, yeah.
Throughout each of kind of what we've spoken about, and I suppose for me, the key thing to kind of take away, from today, is just open that conscious thinking a little bit more. Question about why do I say certain things, or is that a healthy or a helpful term to use? And even if you start with, rather than good morning, grand rising, or good day, or hi, I think it's always a great start.
Or top of the morning.
Top of the morning to you.
Oh, it's got morning.
It has, you see? Even the Irish couldn't get it right.
Oh, dear.
So, yeah. So I'm thinking Grand Rising is the best one.
Grand Rising is a great one, or, Wonderful day. I don't know. Wonderful day. Blessed
But
day.
it has a frequency to it as well. Grand rising.
Grand rising.
It
it's
does,
more
yeah.
empowering, isn't it? It's more rise.
Yes.
Rise up.
And again, it's getting back to the frequency of the words and the sounds that come out. I think that is key, isn't it?
Because I've heard as well the zzz sound has got something to do with frequency. That zzz sound has something to do.
Absolutely, it has. And
rising.
Yes.
Morning.
Yeah.
Rising.
Yes.
That
but also, that zzz, the bees make that. Do you know that beekeepers have the longest life expectancy?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, because I know, random fact, but they're surrounded by that zzz, which is a high. Obviously, you can imagine
it's vibration almost.
It's
isn't
that,
it?
and absolutely, and they are extremely healthy individuals because they're constantly being healed by the sound of the bees.
Buzzing, which is there you go.
Isn't that pretty cool?
That is pretty cool. We must get some bees.
We must get some bees. I would love to, but
yeah. Where do you start?
Our next adventure, we'll be selling honey.
Honey. Selling honey.
Yes. Okay, I think we better stop this before. Who knows?
We're riffing now.
Where we'll end up. So I was going to say something, but I'm consciously aware. I was going to use the word blessed, and I'm going to use that because that's not good. So I am going to wish you all consciously aware and happy day.
There we go. So thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Great having you.
Bye.